Hello, this is Sam Shelton. We're back with Energy 101. Today we're going to look at natural gas fuel vehicles. We've looked at electric vehicles, and this is a good example that we can go through to look at the technology solutions, the deployment of technology that hopefully can have a major impact on our energy issues. And as you have seen throughout this course, the primary issues that I see are carbon emissions and oil imports to the U.S. And anything that will resolve either one of those is certainly good, but they need to, we want to look for the ones that have the big impacts, that can make a significant dent in the amount of oil we import or the amount of carbon that is reduced. You know, a lot of times the research and development to work on the technology that has a very small impact is about the same as doing the research and development on a technology that has a major impact. So let's look at the impacts, which I think we should all do, and decide before we focus on which energy solution we should go after. We need to look at which one has the biggest impact. So that's the purpose today, and see what the barriers might be to natural gas vehicles. The first, of course, we look at the oil consumptions by sector, and we see that oil is used 72% for transportation, 23% for manufacturing, and then residential buildings, commercial buildings, and used and less than 0.5% used to generate electricity. So if we can make a dent in our oil consumption for transportation, then that would be a major create a major reduction in the amount of oil we needed to import, assuming that we maintain and even possibly increase the amount of oil that we're producing in this country that right now for the near term looks we're very optimistic about. So let's look at some numbers. First, do we have enough natural gas? That's the first thing we want to look at. There's no sense in thinking about this as a solution to our oil imports if we don't have enough natural gas to displace a significant amount of that transportation oil. Well, from the last 5 years, from 2007 to 2012, due to natural gas fracking and horizontal welling that we talked about very early in the course, the production is up about 24%. So that's about 5% a year that our U.S. production for natural gas has been up. It was actually, it was depressed back in 2007 and 2008 because of the recession, but that's a nuance that we won't need to get into for our purposes today. So that means that we have had an increase of 14 billion cubic feet per day, and essentially all of that has been taken by the electric power plants. We say, where'd that gas go? We don't produce it and put it in storage. There's a limited amount of gas we can store in underground storage, but and that's stayed about the same because we don't have increased storage capability. But essentially all of that increase that we've had in natural gas over the last 5 years has gone to electric power plants. And it's basically displaced or in new power plants been in lieu of coal fuel power plants. So let's see how much it would take. And here I want to reference James Williams of WTRG, who's an energy economist over in Arkansas. And there's the website that he did a newsletter study that I'm basically tracking here and getting a lot of information from. He got the raw data like I do from the Energy Information Administration, and I agree with the data source. So he's got a few more explanatory notes in that newsletter. So how much natural gas would it take to displace 100% of gasoline? Now, we don't need to do that. We would never do that anyway. But we look at 100%, and then we say, well, let's see, if a major impact would be 25% of that. So it's a way to look and see what it would take to have a major impact on reducing our gasoline and diesel fuel utilization. Well, today gasoline demand is 8.6 million barrels per day, and that's out of our total oil usage of about 15 million barrels per day. Gasoline energy content, if we're going to replace gasoline with natural gas, it takes the same amount of energy. So it'll take a BTU of natural gas to drive the car the same distance as a BTU of gasoline. So that's the basis here. Gasoline energy content is 5.2 million BTUs per barrel, and we'll use 8.6 million barrels of gasoline per day. Now, the natural gas energy content is approximately 1,000 BTUs per cubic foot. So you run the math on that. You take 8.6 million times 5.2 million BTUs per day, divide by 1,024, and you get billions of cubic feet per day, 43.8, essentially 44 billion cubic feet per day. So that's how many billion cubic feet per day of extra natural gas we would have to produce to displace 100% of the gasoline. If we wanted to replace 10% of it, it would be 4.4 billion cubic feet per day. So that's the point of this calculation. Now let's look at diesel fuel, because in a lot of that oil is burned as gasoline. Some of it is burned as diesel fuel. And so what's the transportation diesel fuel demand? Well, it's 2.8 million barrels per day versus the 8 point whatever it was for gasoline. It's less, but it's significant. The diesel fuel energy content is 5.8 million BTUs per barrel. Notice that's a little higher than gasoline, which is 5.2. That's one of the reasons diesel engines get higher fuel mileage than cars than gasoline cars, because when you buy a gallon of diesel, you get more BTUs and than if you buy a gallon of gasoline. Again, the natural gas energy content is 1,024 BTUs per cubic foot. Run the math, it's 2.8 times 5.8 divided by 1,024, and it takes about 16 billion cubic feet per day to displace, have enough natural gas to displace all of the diesel fuel. So when we sum it up here, it takes about 44 of gasoline, BCF per day of natural gas to displace all our gasoline and used in transportation, 16 approximately BCF per day of diesel, and to displace all the diesel, so it's approximately 60 BCF per day of natural gas would displace 100% of our gasoline and diesel fuel and all the fuel oil that consumes. So how does that compare with our natural gas production today? Well, as I noted earlier, the 2012 natural gas production during the year averaged about 69 billion cubic feet per day. So we essentially would have to almost double it. Well, but let's look in this. That's obviously an extreme. But if we wanted to do 10% or 20% or 25%, you merely take that percentage of the 60 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas that would displace all of it. So that's educational. You know, it's not an impossible thing, particularly since we seem to be increasing our natural gas production, or we have in the history anyway. Who knows what's going to happen the next year or two? That's another issue I'll mention. But let's just take 25% displacement of our oil used for transportation. Well, that would require 15 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, 1/4 of the 60, and would have to increase our total natural gas production from 69 to 83. And you know, that's about the same increase we've had over the last 5 years. However, we got to realize vehicles are not the only ones that would like to have this natural gas, assuming we can convert all the vehicles to natural gas. We have competing usage. Electric power is certainly the biggest competing usage. They've already used up the last incremental 14 billion cubic feet per day, and if we continue to build new power plants out of natural gas rather than coal, which we expect to do, then they're going to continue to increase their amount of natural gas consumption. So we got to realize that we're not the only shoppers. New shoppers are looking for gas for vehicles that are looking for that, to use that extra natural gas. The other competing usage is liquefied natural gas exports, where they liquefy it, cool it to minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit, put it on special LNG tankers, and export it. We can export almost everything that we want to, and people like Shell Oil Company are putting hundreds of millions of dollars over the next few years, have stated they were, in exporting, building export equipment and facilities to export LNG. So they're going to be buying extra natural gas that we produce, hopefully that we will produce, for that effort to get some profit back on all that investment. So there are competing usages here. Things are never as simple as they first appear. We have to dig down. Well, what about prices? Well, natural gas drilling activity has actually dropped over the last 6 months or so in particular. And why? Well, because it's not economical at current natural gas prices. What I hear over and over again is it takes about $4 to $4.50 a million BTU gas prices to support new drilling in the shale gas. And of course it was below that, so they started pulling out of drilling new wells. And just to show you how the price has changed, in March of 2012 we were getting natural gas at the wholesale prices that are distributed, where the gas is distributed in Louisiana at the Henry Hub, which is where it's priced, at $2 a million BTUs. A year later, we're getting it at $4. So the price of natural gas has actually doubled approximately in the last year. So prices are going up, and that's going to take away some of the advantages, the economical advantages and savings in fueling our cars and filling them up with natural gas rather than gasoline. So there are a lot of factors here. And people expect that price to say $4, $5, $6 in order to have the increased drilling activity that we have had already, and we hope will continue and even increase. So a lot of things have to come to play here. And we're in a free market capital, enterprise capital economy here, and if people aren't making money at it, we're not going to get it. What about the other part of this natural gas vehicle equation, and that's the fueling stations. If you got the cars to run on natural gas and you got the supply, where are you going to get the fuel? You don't pull up to your friendly corner filling station and refuel your car with natural gas. There are currently about 1,000 U.S. refueling stations in the U.S., and I believe there's somewhere around 300,000 to 500,000 gasoline stations in the U.S. That's coming off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that. Anyway, about half of them, 500 of those, are private fleet-owned operators, like the bus system. A lot of bus systems use natural gas. I live in Atlanta on Peachtree Street. Buses run up and down Peachtree Street. Every bus that runs up and down Peachtree Street in Atlanta is fueled by natural gas, has fuel for many years. And they go back, of course, every night to their lot, and they have a large natural gas refueling station. They refuel all the buses. That's a private refueling station. About 500 of the national natural gas refueling stations are open to the public. So the other issue is vehicle conversions. How do you get people to buy vehicles that are converted to run on natural gas or do a conversion of the vehicle they have? Well, it's an economic issue. Here's some numbers that have recently been put out by Department of Energy in a request for a proposal, a funding opportunity that they're asking for proposals on how to reduce the cost of converting vehicles to fuel run on natural gas. And here's their estimated current cost. If you're going to get the masses to, and that's what you're interested in here, to have a major impact on oil consumption, to drive natural gas vehicles, the one way, and the great way to do it, is just refuel at home in your garage. And that would require, right now that requires about a $4,000 investment. Your storage tanks on your vehicle are about $3,500. They're high pressure, 4,000 or 5,000 pounds per square inch pressure vessels. And the balance of system cost to put it all in with the valves and the fittings and the controls and everything that is about $3,500, and the installation to put it all in is about $1,500. So you're looking at about $12,500 for a person to convert his car to natural gas, put a refueling station in his garage, which, by the way, gets him the cheapest natural gas because he can buy it at the same rates that he buys for his home for heating. And whereas if you go to a public refueling station, they're going to charge you more for the natural gas than you can buy it for at your home, because they got to compress it and they got to have a refueling station and they have to make a profit on that. So this is the way to get the cheapest natural gas, is have your own station, and that may or may not be worthwhile. But for you to rely on public fueling stations, we got to have a major expansion of the number of refueling stations available. The target, what they're asking for, is proposals that would reduce these costs that you see on the right-hand column here, down to the total package would be $4,000. And remember, we're talking about trying to get these converted cars, or natural gas cars, out to the masses. And if you're an auto geek, you can do it a lot cheaper and a lot of variations there. We're talking about the masses that don't know a lot about the car technology, and you just want a nice package, and it's warranted, and just like if they bought a conventional gasoline new car. And they don't want to pay a lot more money, you find out, for a 3 or 5 year payback, because their fuel bill is going to be less. But that's some of the economics that we have to deal with. So what's the summary here? Well, for a major impact, say 25% reduction in the amount of oil demand for transportation, we need about a 25% increase in gas production. And we need to decrease vehicle conversion costs to make compressed natural gas vehicles appeal to the masses. Questions that come up are, can we increase natural gas production, and will it be available for compressed natural gas transportation? What's the time schedule for getting the reduced compressed natural gas converted vehicles down, and the technology developed and deployed? And what about refueling station? So there are lots of questions about implementing this one possibility that for reducing our oil consumption. And by the way, this is not something new. One of the first things I did when I came to Georgia Tech as a faculty member in the 1970s was I was faculty advisor in a Georgia Tech entry into a clean air car race, where the students developed clean air cars. That was controversial at that point in time, and drove them from MIT and Boston, Massachusetts to Pasadena, California, and Caltech. And our entry was the compressed natural gas vehicles. And we drove it the entire distance all the way from Boston to Pasadena on natural gas. It's probably still the only vehicle that's been driven all the way across the country on nothing but natural gas. We had a truck that went with us, brought by the Atlanta Gas Light Company, and they refueled every night at a local natural gas company, and we would stop every 100 miles or so and refuel from the truck. So it's not new technology. We've known it could be done for many, many, many years, and it's a matter of just how do we move it forward into mass adoption. And that's the way it is with most of these solutions to our major issues for reducing our oil consumption and decreasing our carbon emissions. On carbon emissions, by the way, natural gas vehicles will reduce carbon emissions about 15% compared to gasoline, and about 25% for diesels, because it's got more hydrogen per carbon atom. So it will cause 15 to 25% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions compared to gasoline and diesel fuel vehicles. So that's a little bit of a winner there, and moving in the right direction. So I think this is a good example of the depth that we need to look at all these alternatives that people bring up to me about, well, we can just do X, Y, Z, and doing X, Y, Z involves a lot of things and may have some real showstoppers. But we now have the data, know where to get the data in order to run all these calculations. So hopefully you'll be able to look at these possibilities in a little more depth yourself. Thank you.